I'm Jacob Lloyd, and this is the Legal Philosopher assignment. For this assignment, I chose the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. So these are some basic details on Plato's life. He was born in approximately 427 BCE. Now, researchers aren't exactly sure when he was born, but they estimate 427. He was born and he lived in Athens, Greece, the majority of his life, obviously during the ancient Greek era. He was a student of Socrates, and Socrates is a very key character in his life. Not only is he mentioned in many of Plato's texts, but also he influenced a lot of his views on philosophy and the law. And then he taught Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the students of Plato's. He's a very famous philosopher as well. He's actually one of the options of philosophers for this assignment, interestingly. And then Plato died approximately 348 BCE. Again, the researchers don't know exactly when he died, but this is an estimate. So, some more details on Plato's life are that he started a school called the Academy. Many famous philosophers studied here, including Aristotle, and this was very central in Plato's life, and he cared a lot for this academy. He was one of the most significant philosophers in history, in a lot of university philosophy classes all over the world. His books are studied, and he is the father of philosophy, some say. Some of his influences were Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Zeno, and obviously Socrates, who was his teacher and in some ways his mentor to the world of philosophy. He had a tumultuous relationship with the Sicilian Empire. Many times in his life did he travel to Italy and Sicily specifically and work for the rulers there as an educator and tutor. Eventually, the Sicilian Emperor Dionysius tried to sell Plato into slavery. He attempted to, at least, and it did not work out in the end, but he tried to organize a deal to sell Plato into slavery because Plato had angered him. So some of Plato's famous works are The Republic, which is arguably his most famous work and is discussed a lot in law classes and such. Then there's Symposium, The Seventh Letter, Sophist, which is displayed on the left side of the images, Euphedemus, and then something we're going to talk about a lot, the text Laws, which obviously discusses laws and jurisprudence, and that is the central image in this slide. So this is a video by the Oxford University Press where Robert Waterfield discusses the importance of Plato and specifically Plato's probably his seminal work, The Republic.
Why should we read The Republic? I imagine lots of students ask this question to themselves when they're given it as a set book at the beginning of their university course. But in fact, there are many good reasons to read The Republic. And the first one I would pick on is just that it is immensely readable. Plato did not write philosophy like a dry textbook. He wrote it like a living conversation. The whole of The Republic, which is a fairly fat book, is a living conversation written in short, almost soundbite type answers, but nevertheless developing some very, very important ideas. So my first answer then, we should read The Republic just because it is readable. It was written by a genius and it's worth reading. It's easy to read. It's not difficult. But then there's also obviously the thought, the content of the book. And he's asking this absolutely fundamental question: why should we bother to be good? What's in it for us, effectively? It seems, when we look at the world, it looks as though injustice pays. It looks as though crime pays, whereas the good people get trodden down. So Plato addresses this absolutely fundamental question: why should we be good? I'm not going to tell you his answer. Read the book. And then it's a thought-provoking book. So first of all, what I'm trying to say is it's accessible to anybody to read, and it will provoke people to think. He asks the question, what is justice? He gives an astonishing answer, an answer that's bound to make anybody think, because he doesn't frame the answer in terms that we would expect, like justice is to do with equity or how you deal with other people, your friends, your family, the world around you. He frames an answer in terms of how you should structure the different parts of your mind as an individual so that you can become a just person within yourself and then act out that justice in the outside world. So, that's a typical thought-provoking answer that he gives to a fundamental question. This is why we should read the Republic.
So that was just a short video on why Plato's texts are important, specifically the Republic. So some of Plato's views on law, the first of which was absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now this phrase has been used a lot throughout history, and Plato really narrowed down this idea, and he thought if you give one person full authority of something, then they're going to take advantage of that and use it for their own gain instead of the gain of everyone. He also thought that no person should be exempt from the rule of law. This means that no matter how rich, no matter how powerful you are, you must abide by the laws, and there's no exceptions to this rule. And that's something very important that we see in modern law. He also thought law should combine persuasion with compulsion. This basically means that the law should persuade people to do it. It should have vested interest for the citizens, so they want to abide by it, but it should also have compulsion, which is punishment. So if they don't abide by it, if it doesn't persuade them, well, then the compulsion is that you be punished by law if you don't abide by it. And again, he further talks about that by saying citizens will obey the law if it serves them. So if something's in the vested interest of citizens, then they'll abide by that law, such as a law like robbery. Since robbery serves the people aren't going to want to break it because they believe in that law and they believe that if that law is upheld, then society can function well. If a law does not serve in someone's best interest, Plato believes that they will break this law and will have no care for it because it doesn't benefit them. Plato, one of his big ideas in general philosophy, not just about law, but was that everything should be done to improve and enrich the human soul. And he felt law should aim to improve the human soul, as he believed that the soul was what carried the mind and the body, and the soul is the most important thing in the human. And to have a successful society, the soul should be happy and the soul should be joyous. The soul should be good. And he thought the government should benefit all classes. He thought, despite him thinking that, the government should be run by an elite group of supervisors of honorable men, it should still benefit all citizens, regardless of class, but still. And as I touch on now, the elite class, he thinks, should supervise the general citizen body. So he thinks a group of noblemen, a group of high ranking officials, a group of elites should look over everyone else and make the decisions, because Plato did not think that the general population could best make the decisions, and that should be left to the select group of noble people. And this is displayed on the right side of the screen with Plato's classes with an ideal state, doing rulers, auxiliaries, and then the workers, of course. And then he also thought that male citizens must marry by the age of 35, which is rather indicative of the time period where marriage was very crucial to one's life. And Plato thought that you should be married if you're a man by age 35. The rules were a bit different for women, a bit harsher, but that is his general rule on male marriage. Then Plato also had the idea that punishment should be based on harm and intent. So Plato basically defines intent as two things: voluntary and involuntary. So voluntary is something that you plan out, such as someone planning out a murder and then executing that murder. And involuntary is someone, acting out of rage or out of emotion from the soul and then committing that murder, like a crime of passion. Since Plato believes, so deeply in the soul, he thought it's not the same thing if someone plans with malintent instead of acting from their soul's desires. So he thought these two things were different. And again, harm meaning damages, so what damage it cost and what your intent was. This can be an example of this would be if you accidentally spilled coffee on someone's laptop, it shouldn't be treated the same as you intentionally broke that person's laptop. If you intentionally broke someone's laptop, you had intent to destroy their laptop and cause them harm. If you involuntarily did, you did not mean to do that, you do not have a guilty mind, but the same harm was achieved, but the nature of the crime was not the same. So Plato thought this was a fundamental idea of law. And then Plato was very religious and hated impiety. He did not like atheism, deism, and traditional theism. Atheism being you believe in no God, deism meaning you believe in a God, but you believe he doesn't have any connection to humans. And traditional theism is close to what Plato believed, but traditional theism believes that God created all abstract objects, whereas Plato's beliefs on religion were that that's not really the case, and he didn't create these abstract objects. He believed all these forms of belief pose a threat to government, and he believed all these forms of belief should be punished in order to maintain society. And then another idea of Plato's was the Nocturnal Council. This is basically a council that meets every day from about dawn till dusk and discusses matters of the law, how to best serve citizens, how the law can best be executed. And this group was key in discussing the ideas of the law and establishing laws. Much like common law judges discussed how they would decide on cases and decide and explain their methods for deciding on cases. So these are some quotes on law by Plato. I'll move this here. So the first quote is, "Where law is subject to some other authority and has none of its own, the collapse of the state, in my view, is not far off. But if law is the master of government and government is its slave, then the situation is full of promise, and men will enjoy the blessings the gods shower on the state." So this is basically saying that no authority should be given to one person, and no one should have authority over the law. He believes that if you give power to one person over the law, they can abuse that law, and that this absolute power will corrupt absolutely, as we mentioned before. But that law should be over everything, including the government and including government leaders. The other quote about power that I said, which is significant, is access to power needs to be confined to those who are not in love with it. So Plato believes that the people that have power should be reasonable people who are doing it to serve the citizens and serve the interests of the people, not just because they're in love with power and power hungry, as he believes that would negatively affect the state. So his belief is that people who have power should be not power hungry, and they should be able to be reasonable. And some more quotes on law. There's that which is not right, we will no longer say is legal. It's basically saying if a law is not right, morally, objectively, for the people, then it shouldn't be a law. It's saying the laws that we need are the laws that are right for the people. Then he also says, when the souls do become capable of reasoning, these passions can, in consonance with reason, affirm that they have been correctly habituated in the appropriate habits. This consonant in its entirety is virtue. This is basically saying that reason and passion should be combined when considering the law, and that you don't want your passion to overwhelm you, and that you just are solely driven by emotions and passions. You should also have reason for something, and reason is really fundamental in making decisions on the law, and we need reason so that we can control our passion and desire. This is a fundamental idea, and that we see this today. An example of ratio decidendi, which basically in law means that the reasoning for a judge's decision. So, and this helps make sure that judges don't just make the decision of passion, but actually make the decision of reasoning, and that they don't just make a biased decision due to the desires and passions. As we can see here, this is how Plato of like this triangle: reason over passion over desire. So once we have the reason, we can have the passion, and we can mix them both to create a good legal society. Now, Plato's views of law did have some critiques. One of the modern critiques of his book Laws was that it was contradictory of many of Plato's other texts, specifically the Republic. Many say that the states established in the two books differ from one another, and that some of the ideals in the two books differ from one another. Many also critique Plato's view that we understand our behaviors because they're natural, and what's natural is good, wherever it's believed, customs and conventions are better at defining human behavior and what we should go by. So many believe custom and convention over nature. And then Aristotle, one of Plato's students, actually critiqued his work. Aristotle disagreed with Plato's views on a mixed regime, which is having different levels of classes, have different powers. And Aristotle disagreed with the nocturnal council. And now a common belief amongst many is that the book had clunky and awkward writing, uh, and that it wasn't written amazingly. So that is a big um, criticism of many. And they say a lot attribute this to Plato's old age when he wrote this, despite the ideas being key and fundamental in our modern society. Some still believe due to his age, he couldn't write to his full ability as he once could with the Republic. But this does not diminish the ideas any less. Just comments on his writing at the time. So these are my works cited. Part two, works cited. Yeah, so that's my presentation on Plato. I hope you enjoyed it.